The first clue was a blank line in my onboarding packet, a little box labeled non-disclosure agreement, with nothing in it except a faint gray outline where a signature should have been. I noticed it on my first day at Harberlin and Company, a boutique corporate law firm in downtown Boston with marble floors, brass nameplates, and the kind of silence that makes you lower your voice even when you are alone. HR handed me a stack of papers and a pen that felt too expensive for a Tuesday. "Sign here, here, and here," the HR coordinator said, smiling like paperwork is a personality. I flipped pages on instinct. I have always been the kind of person who reads the fine print, not because I am paranoid, but because I respect consequences. At the NDA page, the coordinator glanced at her phone, said something about the printer jam, and slid a replacement sheet on top. I watched her do it. The new sheet did not match the packet. The footer was different. The signature block was missing my name. No initials line, no date line, just a title and empty space. I held the page up. "This looks incomplete." She laughed lightly. "Oh, that is fine. We have a standard NDA on file. You are covered." Covered. That word should have made me push harder. But it was my first day, my suit was still stiff, and the office smelled like fresh paint and ambition. I signed the pages she flagged. I did not sign the NDA because there was nothing to sign. That was 15 years ago. The mistake sat in a file cabinet like a sleeping snake. My name is Daniel Price. I am 48. I built my career on being the most responsive corporate attorney most executives have ever met. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, just the one who answers at 2 a.m. and does not act like your panic is inconvenient. Clients adored that. They did not say it in a poetic way. They said it the way executives speak when something matters. "Daniel, you care," they would tell me. "You actually listen." Harberlin sold itself as a firm, but what it really sold was the feeling of safety, and I was the one holding the flashlight. Last spring, everything changed. The founder, Martin Harberlin, stepped back. His nephew, Cole Harberlin, stepped forward. Cole was 29 with a management degree and a talent for speaking in slogans. His suits were slim, his smile was rehearsed, and his legal knowledge was theoretical, like he had studied the concept of contracts in a museum. On his first week, he hosted a town hall called The Future of Harberlin. He stood in front of a screen that said "Bold Shift" in giant letters and talked about efficiency like it was a moral virtue. "We are streamlining client touch points," Cole said. "We will reduce dependency on individual relationships." Dependency on individual relationships. That was an interesting way to describe trust. I did not argue. I kept my head down. My wife, Mara, had a chronic condition that made insurance not optional. Our son, Ethan, was a senior in college. Our daughter, Lila, was a sophomore. We did not need a revolution. We needed stability. Then my mother had a stroke. Not a dramatic movie stroke. A real one. The kind that leaves you staring at hospital monitors and learning new definitions of the word fragile. I submitted a leave request, formal, documented, respectful. 2 weeks. Partial remote work if needed. I offered coverage plans for every active matter. HR approved it in the portal. Green checkmark. Auto email. Cole denied it in person. "You are integral," he said. "Also, this is a high-performance culture. Taking leave sets a tone." I stared at him. My mother cannot speak. He smiled like he was sympathetic. "I get it. But business is business." I took the leave anyway, because family is family. 3 days into my leave, I got an email titled "Termination Notice. Cause unapproved absence." I read it twice, then a third time because my brain refused to accept that someone could fire a 15-year attorney for taking approved leave that HR had documented. Cole did not call. He did not meet. He did not even send a human message. He delegated my life to a template. At the bottom of the email was an attachment titled "Separation Packet." Inside, a non-compete clause, a non-solicitation clause, an NDA, and right there, on page 2, was the same empty signature block I remembered from my first day. The sleeping snake opened one eye. By the time I got home from the hospital that evening, my phone was buzzing like an angry beehive. Not friends, not family, clients. Lydia Chen, CFO of Westgate Medical Devices, texted first. "Daniel, why am I getting reassigned to a junior associate? I have a board call at 7 o'clock. I stared at the message for a long moment. The safe response was silence. The dangerous response was anything that could be twisted into a violation. But then I remembered the blank signature block, the missing initials line, the HR coordinator 15 years ago telling me I was covered. Covered by what, exactly? I called Mara into my office and showed her the separation packet. She read the NDA page, then looked at me. "Did you ever sign this?" I said I never did. They never had a signature line on the page. Mara, who has spent years watching me absorb stress quietly, went very still. "So they fired you for taking leave they approved, and they never got you under NDA. That is almost impressive." I said, "It is more than impressive. It is the entire chessboard flipping." I contacted an employment attorney, a calm woman named Renee Salas, who spoke like she had seen every version of corporate arrogance. "Send me your onboarding packet if you still have it," she said. I did. "Because I keep everything. It is my love language." Renee called back within an hour. "Daniel," she said, "this is a mess. Their NDA is unenforceable against you without your signature, and their non-solicitation is likely tied to that agreement. Also, firing you for approved leave is not a good look." I said, "What does that mean in plain English?" "It means," she replied, "if clients seek you out independently, you can accept them. You must be careful about how you communicate, but you are not bound by a secret you never agreed to." I thought of my clients, 37 of them, not as a list, but as people. Executives who had my personal number because I answered. Founders who trusted me with acquisitions. General counsels who called me before they called their spouses. They did not love Harborland. They loved how safe I made them feel. At 9:10 p.m., Lydia Chen called. "Daniel," she said, "that kid keeps saying he will circle back. I do not need a circle. I need an answer." I breathed out slowly. "Lydia, I am no longer with Harborland as of today." Her silence was sharp. "Did you quit?" I said. "They terminated me while I was on medical leave for my mother." She swore softly. "That is insane. Are you allowed to talk to me?" I chose my words carefully. "I can speak to you as Daniel Price, attorney. You can choose your counsel." Lydia did not hesitate. "I choose you." By midnight, I had 5 more similar calls. Not because I solicited anyone, but because when attentive service disappears, clients notice like a light switch turning off. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I sat by my mother's bed and held her hand. She could not speak, but her eyes tracked me like she wanted to tell me something important. I said, "You always told me to stand tall." Then I opened my email and drafted a simple announcement. Not a pitch, not a recruitment, just a fact. Daniel Price now offers independent corporate contract counsel services. Please contact directly for availability. I sent it to nobody. I posted it quietly on my professional profile, the one the clients already followed. Within hours, messages poured in, not just from existing clients, from referrals, from friends of clients, from competitors who had heard Harborland pushed out the one attorney who actually picked up the phone. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Daniel Price," the voice said. "This is Isaac Mendel, General Counsel at Summit Harbor Holdings. Lydia Chen suggested I call. Are you taking new clients?" I looked out the hospital window at the gray Boston sky and felt something I had not felt since the termination email. Control. I said, "Yes. But I do things a certain way. I answer. I document. I care." Isaac replied, "That is exactly what we want." In the background, the sleeping snake was not just awake now. It was stretching. Harborland tried to put the genie back in the bottle with a lawsuit threat, which was adorable in the way a toddler threatening to fire you is adorable. 3 days after my quiet profile update, I received a letter from Harborland and Company legal counsel. Cease and desist, violation of confidentiality, unlawful solicitation, return of proprietary materials. I forwarded it to Renee Salas. She replied in 7 minutes. They are bluffing. Also, their letter references an NDA agreement number that does not exist in your signed documents. I smiled for the first time all week. That afternoon, I got a call from HR. Not the coordinator from 15 years ago, a new voice, strained and careful. "Daniel, we have a compliance concern. Do you recall signing an NDA at onboarding?" I said I recall noticing it was missing a signature line. Silence. She said, "That is not possible. I said, "It is in my scanned packet. Would you like a copy?" She did not answer immediately. Then she said, "Please send it." I sent it. 2 hours later, my phone rang again, this time from Cole Harberlin himself. "Daniel," he said, trying to sound friendly, "we need to clear up some confusion." I said, "We sure do." He said, "You cannot take clients. That is firm property." I replied, "Clients are not furniture." Cole chuckled like I was joking. "You know what I mean." I said, "I know exactly what you mean, and I do not agree." He shifted tone. "Look, you were terminated for cause. Unapproved absence. You created risk." I said, "HR approved my leave in writing." He said, "That approval was invalid." I said, "Then that is your HR mistake, not my misconduct." Cole went cold. "You are being difficult." I answered, "No, I am being precise." Then he tried the classic move, a fake offer. "Come back," he said. "We can reinstate you, retroactively. We will pretend this never happened." I thought of my mother's hospital room. I thought of his line about high-performance culture. I thought of my 15 years of missed vacations and late-night calls. I said, "No." He hissed, "You are making an enemy of this firm." I replied, "You already did that when you fired me for taking care of my mother." Then I hung up. The next week felt like watching a dam crack. Not with an explosion, but with small fractures spreading. One client asked for a new lead attorney and got handed an associate who responded in 2 days instead of 2 hours. They left. Another client tried to close an acquisition and discovered the new team did not know their risk tolerance or their board dynamics. They left. A third client called the firm emergency line at 11:30 p.m. and got voicemail. They left. And they did not just leave. They came to me. Not because I promised discounts, not because I ran ads, because I answered. I set up a small office inside a shared suite near Post Office Square. One desk, one assistant, and a phone that I actually picked up. Every time a client asked, "Are you allowed to represent us?" I gave them the same calm reply. "You are allowed to choose your counsel. I am allowed to accept you. I did not sign an NDA, and I will not share anything unethical. I will serve you." They loved that. Executives do not always want drama. They want certainty. Within 14 days, I had 18 retained clients. 4 were new referrals. 1 was a major account Harberlin had chased for years and never landed. By day 21, Harberlin made its first real mistake. They filed a lawsuit. Renee called me laughing. They attached the NDA as Exhibit A. I said, "The unsigned one." She said, "Yes, the unsigned one. They just proved your point to the court." I looked at my client list and realized something startling. This was not me taking clients. This was clients escaping. And the door was open because HR forgot to make me sign the lock. Harberlin leadership tried to stop the bleeding with a firm-wide announcement called Client Continuity Initiative, which sounded like a bandage named by committee. It did not work. The lawsuit backfired immediately. The judge did not rule on the full dispute yet, but he did issue a temporary order that said, in polite legal language, "Prove the agreement exists before you demand compliance." Cole Harberlin looked like a man who had just learned gravity is not optional. Meanwhile, clients kept coming. Not all of them at once, but like a steady tide. Each one told me some version of the same thing. "You were the only one who checked in. You remembered our board schedule. You asked about our staff. You caught issues before they became fires." One CEO, Marisol Grant, said it bluntly during our intake call. "Daniel, your old firm treated me like a billing code. You treated me like a person." That line stuck. Harberlin responded by calling clients and warning them, "If you work with Daniel, you may be dragged into litigation." That was the funniest part, because it revealed the truth. Harberlin did not see clients as partners. Harberlin saw them as hostages. Clients hate being treated like property. One afternoon, I received an email from Isaac Mendel at Summit Harbor Holdings. He forwarded me a message from Cole. "We strongly advise you to cease engagement with Daniel Price due to ongoing legal action." Isaac wrote underneath, in plain text, "Daniel, this is insulting. Please advise." I replied carefully, "You are free to choose counsel. They are free to make noise. I will focus on your needs." Isaac responded immediately, "Then focus. We have an acquisition meeting in 2 hours and I want you on it." That was the pattern. The more Harberlin threatened, the more clients remembered why they trusted me. My revenge was not a dramatic confrontation. It was consistency. I built a small practice model around responsiveness. Weekly check-ins, clear timelines, direct access, no assistant gatekeeping, no delay theater. Clients ate it up. In corporate life, attention is rare, so when you give it freely, it feels like luxury. By the end of the second month, I had 29 of Harborlin old accounts. All came to me through documented inbound contact, with timestamps, with call logs, with emails that began with some version of, "Are you available?" Renee Salas loved my documentation. She called it my paper armor. Then came the twist. A senior partner at Harborlin, Victor Lang, asked to meet me for coffee. Victor was 63, old Boston legal, the kind of man who knows where every body is buried and keeps the map in his head. He sat across from me, stared into his cup, and said, "Cole is drowning." I said, "I noticed." Victor sighed. "HR pulled your onboarding file. There is no signed NDA. There is no signed non-solicitation. There is an email chain from 15 years ago about printer errors and missing forms." I asked, "So you know?" He nodded. "They are trying to blame the HR coordinator who left years ago. They are also trying to claim you signed something else." I said, "They can claim anything." Victor leaned forward. "Daniel, I did not like what they did to you. Firing you for leave is indefensible. But I need to ask, what do you want?" It was a good question. Revenge can become a hobby if you are not careful. I said, "I want my clients protected. I want them served. I want my mother's hospital bills paid without begging a nepotism manager for mercy." Victor nodded slowly. Then he said, "Then keep doing what you are doing. Harborlin is about to implode." A week later, Harborlin sent another letter, this one softer, asking for settlement. They offered me money if I would stop taking clients and sign a retroactive NDA. Retroactive. Like they could time travel their own negligence. Renee responded on my behalf with one clean sentence. "Mr. Price will not sign agreements he never agreed to, and he will not abandon clients who independently chose his counsel." The next day, the lawsuit was withdrawn. Not dismissed. Withdrawn. Because they realized they could not win. And because every day they fought, another client left. Harborlin tried to modernize. They forgot that loyalty is not a software feature. It is earned, one answered call at a time. On the morning Harborlin announced Cole Harborlin was stepping down for personal reasons, I was on a video call with Marisol Grant, walking her through a contract clause that would save her company millions. She paused mid-call and said, "Daniel, I just got an email. Harborlin is restructuring leadership." I said, "I hope they restructure their values too." She laughed, then turned serious. "I want to say something. When you left, I realized I was staying with a firm out of habit. You reminded me I can choose better. That was the real win. Not Cole losing his title. Clients remembering they have agency." After Cole was removed, I got a call from Martin Harborlin himself, the founder. His voice was tired, like regret has weight. "Daniel," he said, "I owe you an apology." I said, "I appreciate that." He said, "I did not know they fired you over medical leave." I replied, "But you built a system where someone could." He was quiet. Then he said, "Can we make this right? I could have been petty. I could have demanded a partnership. I could have asked for a corner office and a plaque. Instead, I said, you can make it right by letting your remaining clients choose without threats, and by fixing HR so nobody else is forced into this." He exhaled slowly. "Understood." Then he asked, "Are you happy?" I looked at my calendar. It was full but not chaotic. My rates were fair, my boundaries were real, and my clients were grateful instead of entitled. I said, "Yes, I am." That afternoon, I visited my mother. She was recovering, slowly, rebuilding speech in fragments. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Danny." I said, "I am here." She stared at me, then said the clearest sentence she had managed in weeks. "Good boy." I laughed softly, because I am 48 and my mother still knows how to cut through everything. In the months that followed, my practice grew beyond Harborlin clients. Referrals poured in from the very executives who once assumed they were hiring a marble lobby. I hired 2 associates, both sharp and kind. I taught them my rule. If a client calls scared, you do not punish them for fear. You steady them. We built a culture of care as a strategy, not a slogan. It worked. 1 year after my termination, a legal industry magazine asked me to speak at their conference. The topic was client retention in a digital age. I told them the truth. Technology is helpful, I said, but attention is irreplaceable. People remember who answers. After the talk, a young lawyer asked me how I took so many clients so quickly. I did not brag. I did not mention Cole or the lawsuit or the HR mistake. I said, I showed up for people when it mattered, and when the firm stopped doing that, the people moved. Later that week, I received a message from Lydia Chen. Daniel, we just renewed our engagement for another year. The board said you are the first lawyer they trust to tell them bad news without making them feel stupid. I smiled and wrote back, that is my job. At night, Mara and I sat at our kitchen table, the same one where I told her I was fired. It felt like a different lifetime. My mother's health was improving. Ethan graduated. Lila found a scholarship. The panic that once sat in the corners of our house was gone. Mara asked, do you ever think about that missing NDA page? I said, yes. She said, do you feel lucky? I thought about it carefully. I said, I feel vindicated, not because I escaped, but because the clients proved what I always believed. Clients do not stay for a logo. They stay for the person who cares. Harborlin tried to fire me for taking leave. HR forgot to lock the door. And every client walked out behind me, not because I pulled them, but because I held it open.